Testing. All right. All right. Testing, everybody. Please let me know if the sound is okay. Otherwise, I can wear the other mic. But, oh, what a crazy world we live in right now. Who would have ever thought that a couple of rich people eating crazy bats in an unsanitary Wuhan market would take the entire world down? Man. In like 50 years, when people study epidemiology and the human race and the things that we've done and the stupid shit that we get up to, people are going to be like, what the fuck was that? It's like literally, and you know, the annoying thing is those markets were shut down after the last freaking outbreak, but then they just reopened them. And it's like, why do you eat that? Like, Anyway, welcome everybody to CanHammer TV. It's April 15th. It is week whatever of quarantine world, and had a pretty unproductive day at the hospital. A safe day, but you know, it's just so inefficient right now. And the government, despite their lip service to healthcare workers and physicians, is just, they are actually, you know, behind the scenes being extremely difficult and obstructionist in trying to actually thank us, i.e. pay us. Nobody likes to work for free, and physicians are no different. And especially if we're doing risky things every day, we would like to actually just get paid our normal amount on time, and not be jerked around. And basically that is exactly what the government is doing to us right now. So, yeah. So welcome, Sean Stryker, welcome. And rise and shine, good morning to you. I guess you're somewhere around the world. And so thanks for watching. See Farsight, you are late today. You're normally the first to comment, and you were 4th to comment today. So should be ashamed of yourself. Welcome. Germany. Okay. Germany, rise and shine. What are you talking about? It's 2 a.m. That's not rise and shine yet. So welcome guys to episode 14 of Custodes Tactica. So if there's anything we can keep going in this crazy time, it is learning and more about how to play Custodes well, and in preparation for our book, if and when it ever arrives. So that's what we'll carry on doing. God, I miss playing Warhammer. I refuse to use Tabletop Simulator. It looks shit. And I refuse to give in, and at least now I have Final Fantasy VII to kill my time, which is amazing, by the way. But you know, I do miss playing Warhammer, I gotta say. So hopefully sometime soon. Hopefully we won't have to cancel CCBB. We're gonna make that decision at some point soon, but it's not looking good, I tell people. But who knows? The world can turn around. Just as stupidly as this started, it could easily swing the other way if somebody makes a breakthrough or something. Who knows? Over here in Canada, it looks like we may be starting to level out on the curve, and so that's good. But, you know, nobody's going to, probably nobody's going back to work anytime soon. Bobby Halls, welcome. So we'll carry on doing what we're doing, and at least give you some content and see how that goes. Despite this, though, the hobby still seems strong. We got people still doing Meta Mondays. What exact meta they're talking about, I'm not sure. Mostly just the old meta plus a couple of new books. But, just keep list building and doing all the things that Warhammer players do anyway in their downtime. So we'll keep doing our thing, and hopefully it keeps people entertained. Big shout out to everybody who keeps watching, supporting, following us, subscribing. Big shout out to patrons. Big shout out to Dan at Red Dragon. He's keeping it real for people, delivering door to door 3 to 4 times a week, driving around like a madman, delivering product to people. So big shout out to Dan. If you do want something and you're in Eastern Ontario, anywhere in Eastern Ontario he can get to you, just let him know. Check him out at Red Dragon. Still got a lot of stuff and he can get it to you. He can get it to you. I've been looking at board games, been playing a lot of Gloomhaven recently with Francois and Phil and Barney, so that's been fun. So we're keeping ourselves busy, and we'll carry on with the Tactica tonight. Working away slowly at the Eldar bikes. I'm put down the base layers on not the base layers, but I put down my black and white volumes on my Eldar bikers. The bikers themselves, you don't paint miniatures, you paint volumes. Basically I discovered Marco Frazzoni, and his videos have changed my entire style of painting. It's much more exciting painting now. Rather than just painting details, you're actually painting volumes and stories and contrasts. Anyway, it's an interesting other way to look at it. But anyway, so that's going along. So hopefully by the time all this ends, I will have a complete army there. Although I still got a lot to paint. Playing Final Fantasy VII, no spoilers, but it is a great game. It is everything that I thought the remake would be. Have a lot of old stuff in it, but good new stuff, new content. I didn't want it just to be a completely just up graphic version of Final Fantasy VII. So kudos to Square on so far a really good game. It's a bit button mashing for me in terms of the combat, but there is some strategy to it. But I understand that just using the old system would not have been a very modern way of making a video game. So anyway, it is what it is, but so far it's an amazing game, and it just is just a beautiful game. Beautiful game. Oh, it's really beautiful. And the thing they really do well with it is, in the old game, granted this was like 20 years ago, but you were in a giant city. You're just little people in a giant city, but the city itself didn't feel that big when you were in it. And, the screens were, while they were very good at the time, it didn't give you the impression of giantness. Of course, it's hard at that time to have the graphics to do that, although it was a pretty revolutionary game of its time in terms of 3D approach. But this game is, you can look around everywhere. Like, I sometimes just spend minutes looking around at the background or at the detail or at the things around me. It's really a beautiful game. So tonight we're going to talk about matchups. This is actually a good time to talk about matchups because the game is kind of frozen right now. So it's a good time to look at things since things used to move so quickly. So we're going to talk about matchups, and what I'm going to do actually, I thought there's two ways of doing it. One is to look at matchups in terms of army archetypes, so gun lines, combat army, close combat army, psycho heavy army, that sort of thing. But then lots of armies do some of these things well, and so you end up talking about the same archetype multiple times. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to go faction by faction, and we're going to cover some of the most common build types for those factions that we've seen, and then go over it that way and talk about how you would approach those games. Originally, I thought I would set up some armies on the table and actually show some stuff, but there's way too much to set up. It would take way too much time for me to faff around and switch the setups and everything on stream, so it wasn't a reasonable way of doing it. So we're just going to talk, but we're going to separate it out into factions, and by going through all the factions, we will cover all the army archetypes that way. Disclaimer, there are some armies I've never played against, so I don't, even though I may have read the books and I've heard about them, I don't have any play experience against every single army of every single faction. So that's one disclaimer. And the second disclaimer is that, this is based on my own knowledge and skills and experience, as this whole series is. So if you do discover better ways of dealing with things, or bad matchups or good matchups, then let us know. Join the Custodes Discord. It is the CanHammer Discord, a very big community of Custodes players there, growing every day. Join it. Check out the link right there. That was just updated today, so that one will work for 24 hours. I hate how Discord makes your links expire, and when you click never on it, never expire. It doesn't work right now. So anyway, if you need the new link, then just hit me up on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, and then I can just send you the most recent link. But do join us and discuss these things. We're talking about these things all the time: lists, matchups, tactics, rules questions, all sorts of things. And in fact, a few people now have sent me their games either written out as a narrative or pictures, or nobody sent me video yet, and just getting feedback on their games, and I'm super happy to do that. I got a lot of time these days to do that, and so I'm happy to do that for people if they want to send me stuff like that. I'm happy to comment on those things, and hope people find it helpful. So we are going to talk about matchups. So let's just go. So before we talk about specific matchups, we're going to talk about general principles. So one of the questions on the Discord was, how do you know if you got a good matchup and you should go for it? How do you know if you got a bad matchup and you should be as, safe as possible? How do you tell if you have a good matchup, and what, maybe other than just knowing I suck against this army and that army, how do you tell? Now, I'm of the opinion that against most armies, a well-played, well-constructed Custodes army can stand at least a good chance of winning the game. There are some really bad matchups that, even no matter how good you are, is really tough. But generally, if you play a good army and you play it well, and you have certain other things, you stand a chance. It's just that kind of book. It's a book that relies on 4-up invulns, and so, you have a chance. You always have a 50-50 chance, some would say. So one of the things that really determines if you're not sure if you have a good or bad matchup is the simple things. So what's the mission? So we're talking ITC missions here mostly. So which mission are you on? They're generally better for us these days than they used to be, because they generally have more objectives. They're not as wide split. So the 3 objective one was never that great. The 6 objective one was better. Character one is okay, depending on the. So it's actually probably slightly better now in terms of objectives for us to play. So, but the mission matters. Which mission are you playing? It matters a little bit. It's probably not one of the most important ones. Probably one of the most important things that will determine how well you do in your game is the deployment. So the decision to be attacker, defender, and then working out your deployment can be very vital to you. And as we talked about last time in the deployment section, and if you missed it, episode 13 was on deployment. The deployment can really break you if you have a bad deployment, i.e. like Dawn of War or something. So that's important. That's an important factor that may change a hard matchup into an easier matchup, or could change an easy matchup into a bad matchup. So mission, deployment, and terrain. So terrain is super important for an army that relies on hiding and having good terrain. Terrain is important. You will lose more games than you win, regardless of anything else, if you're playing on Planet Bowling Ball. And while this may not be something you can control, you can certainly influence your local area's levels of terrain by setting your own example and contributing to the local terrain pool and things like that. So there are things you can do if you find that your local stores and things don't have enough terrain. But terrain levels really do make or break our game. So those are kind of the 3 general things that I would think about if you're going up to a game, other than your list and your opponent's list and knowing what your opponent's list can do, identifying kind of the things that you need to worry about and the things you don't need to worry about. The general things, obviously mission, terrain, and deployment. And then you need to pick good secondaries. But every army needs to pick good secondaries, so that's kind of a throwaway statement. If you pick bad secondaries, no matter what army you are, other than a few exceptions, you're probably not going to do well anyway. So let's go through it. We're going to go through each faction or lump them together as appropriate. So add mech. So a pure AdMech army tends to be gunline. The Electro Priest thing with the termite drills, the chicken walkers, those things aren't particularly threatening. Electro Priest can be, but you can if you just tanglefoot them, then they're really easy to kill when they don't have that crazy invuln going. But generally, at the strengths of AdMech are gunline. We don't know what the new flyers and the new dog walkers and stuff are, so we won't talk about any of those things. But as they stand right now, and obviously they're the next book out, they're a pretty gunline army. Robots, dune crawlers, those freaking Scorpius tanks. They're pretty much a gunline army with screen. And as such, you treat it like a gunline. I think in general, our matchups against gunline armies really depend on the gunline. Generally, we do okay if the gunline is not crazy tough. So Iron Hand's gunline was stupid because not only would you die from it, but if you did manage to get there, you would then die in combat and not be able to kill anything. Same with Tau, right? So Tau gunline, it's a crazy gun line. Then it shoots you again when you charge, and then you only kill drones when you get in melee. So normal gun lines, guard gun lines, AdMech gun lines, are not that threatening to us, as one would expect, providing you have terrain where you can hide, and so you're only dealing with out of line of sight shooting, which with -1 to hit banner and cover is fairly good. And you can slowly make your way up and engage. And generally, your strategy against gun lines is to make your way up and then wrap. Wrap as you go, wrap screens, and then bad touch things. And generally, gun lines, once you get there, turn 2, turn 3, game is over. They have nothing else to do to you other than stand back and shoot you. And that's a limitation of gun lines. So that's how you... AdMech I would consider a good matchup. I don't think I've lost to an pure AdMech list before. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll eat my words. But so it's a decent matchup for us if it's an pure AdMech gun line. If you add a knight in there, so we'll talk a bit about souping in a knight, so a proper Imperial knight, not an AdMech knight, then I don't think it changes it too much, except that your priority then becomes to neutralize the knight first. But you can still hide from a knight, and if the knight comes forward and leaves its screens and comes to get you, then that actually just makes it easier for you to get it, rather than having it sit at the back and shoot you for 3 turns. So it changes a little bit, but doesn't swing it in favor. And you won't see AdMech with 2 knights, so because they got to invest in their shooting stuff. So I think that's sort of the AdMech sort of gun line is a good matchup for us. Okay, next is Sisters. Locally, we only have Steve who plays Sisters, and Steve is a great guy, but maybe he doesn't run the most competitive of lists so far. I don't know what he's running recently. From what I've seen, Sisters is really about speed, mobility, and actually hard-hitting combat. So they have 3 or 4 units that move very fast and hit pretty hard in combat, lots of fusion pistols and stuff, and throwing invulns and ignoring APs all around, then, it's bad news. The ignoring AP doesn't really affect us that much. Whatever, you ignore my AP, not a big deal, not a big shooting army. But you have to try and play cagey and get the combats as you want them. You want to hit first before they hit. So that's kind of the way you have to play it against a fast combat army. If I'm thinking like Andrew Gagno's Sisters Army at the CanHammer team was kind of like that. Lots of fast-moving MSU kind of combat stuff. They have some shooting. They have the Exorcist at the back. And yeah, while you get lucky occasionally with shooting, Exorcist is generally not as effective as they would hope. Especially if you make them move to shoot and you have -1 to hit, now you're -2 to hit. So I think that's probably not where the strength of Sisters lies, is really their units that sort of jump around and stuff. So I think we have a decent matchup against Sisters. The only thing is that they hit fairly hard and you have a lot of prowess, but they're cheap, so they have a lot, so they're kind of hoardy as well, and they're hard hitting hoardy. So that's the only thing versus orcs, which are hoardy but hit you with 0 AP 4 strength 4 hits. So there's a difference there in the type of combat. And they can have a lot of bodies. So I think it's an okay matchup. If you play carefully, you play smart, you can win a Sisters matchup. Black Guys, what do I think of Sagittarium Guard? Well, I don't want to go on a tangent about Sagittarium Guard, but I think they lack a little bit of place in a Custodes army right now. But okay, so I think Sisters is an okay matchup if you play smart, and generally you try and hit first. Generally, you always want to try and hit first. It's kind of a silly statement, but for sure. Okay, Guard. Okay, so Guard have a number of ways of running these days. You could have old school Guard with 120, 130 guardsmen, a big Bulgrin unit, and then maybe some tanks at the back, stuff like that. That's not as popular a build right now, and that's not a build that we're particularly scared of. Guardsmen do not scare us. Guardsmen do nothing to us. Guardsmen are just there to double score recon and double score King of the Hill and hold objectives and to try and hold out and block things. So Guardsmen are rat bait, and we love Guardsmen. Rat bait and Butcher's Bill bait. Bulgrins can be scary. Bulgrins are a unit that you want to hit first and try and do as much as you can before getting hit. Ideally, if you can hit them on a turn when they failed that psychic power, then that's ultimately great. But if you're having to deal with a bunch of 3-up invulns, it can be really swingy. You'll either mash the whole unit easily, or you'll kill like 2 guys and then you get wrecked back. The 2 damage on the Bulgrins, it really hurts even our Terminators. But the +1 banner does help increase the math in your favor to kill most of a Bulgrin unit if you get to hit it first. Plus, if you hit it, they don't get the +1 for charging. So you have to play cagey and play a bit of bait and sneak and bait that Bulgrin unit out. Other than that, most infantry-based Guard lists are not threatening to us. They're all T3, they're all Strength 3 or Strength 4, no AP, 1 damage. Like that's not good. It's going to take units and units of Guardsmen, like turns and turns, to take down 3 Guardians. And you just mow through them. And they're such good rat bait. Okay, so that's Guard infantry style. The more popular Guard builds right now are really artillery and Leman Russ spam. So let's go artillery, or a combination of that. Artillery with Leman Russes. So, and that's just a spectrum from one end to the other. So I've seen lists going with 9 basilisks these days, which I'm not too scared of. The average basilisk is not doing much to you. Hitting on 4s, random number of shots, -1 to hit, so hitting on 5s, getting through your invuln, doing D3 damage. Like, it's not particularly threatening. The super souped up basilisk that they have to spend 2 or 3 CP on to hit on 3s and does flat 3 damage and blah blah blah, that is a lot more threatening. But even then, with -1 to hit and an invuln save, you're lessening that blow, but that can take out a Guardian unit over 1 or 2 turns. The other artillery suffers from the same problem as Guard artillery normally suffers from, is -1 to hit is still really good against Guard. Making things hitting on 5s sucks for them, and so they're just spending all this money on indirect fire, and it's all hitting on 5s, and you have good invulns, and the minute you touch them, it's game over. And the more artillery they have, the more of a footprint it has to have, and the less they're able to move. So you just touch the front thing, and then the whole shooting just gets shut down. So it's definitely got its weaknesses. And I'm sorry, but 60 Guardsmen is not a screen. Like, any good combat army will easily go through that screen in half a turn. So, and in fact, that becomes a liability because they're rat bait for your tanks. So not too scared of Guard artillery generally. Once you start to mix Leman Russ tanks in there in small numbers or in increasingly large numbers to the point where your army is just all Leman Russ tanks, then that is the kind of tank gun line that is scary. Those Punishers don't really bother us. The battle cannons and the demolishers. Let's not even talk about the relic battle cannon because that's just designed to kill Custodes, multiple Custodes at a time. But even the normal battle cannon and the demolisher can be really painful. And tank commanders, of course, hit on threes, and with all the Talarn stuff, you can't shoot them, and they go in and out, and they don't suffer penalties. And so it's really, really a tricky matchup. You gotta hope for terrain, hide and move up as best as you can. And they do usually have some screen. If they're a good player, they won't let you anywhere near them to wrap you. But if you can, you wrap your way to victory. And then bad touch. Because those things are still super susceptible to bad touch. And generally, once you touch one, you're in the process of then touching multiple after that. So I think that's what you have to try and do. Work your way up slowly. So I think it's an okay matchup against tank spam, Leman Rush spam. It's a much better matchup against artillery spam. And those would be the two most common ways that I've seen people playing guard recently. People have questions, please put them in the chat as we go, and we'll answer them up. Okay, next we're going to talk about Blood Angels and Space Wolves together. So these are two Space Marine armies that are pretty much combat-focused armies. Now, we haven't seen anybody play Space Wolves yet because of COVID. But, you know, the Space Wolves army is not a shooting army. It's basically a combat army. Thunderwolf Cav, Wolfen, Blood Claws. I've even seen drop pod lists coming back. I think if... And then Blood Angels we all know about, so Sanguinary Guard, Death Company, Smash Captain. So all these guys are pretty predictable. They're coming at you from the front or from the air or from the sides, and they want to smash your face in. So against an army like that, you have a good chance, but you got to strike first. Hey Tom, welcome. You got to strike first, and you have to watch out for like the Belt of Rus, for example, which makes he picks a unit and it fights last. This is where the character sniping ability of the Alaris really come in handy. You snipe out that dude who has the Belt of Rus. You snipe out the Homunculus that has the Vexator mask. So you got to get rid of those kind of things if you can, because otherwise you're sunk. Any of the combat army units from either of these two armies will kill an entire Custodes unit of whatever. So you really got to hit first and try and take as much as you can and then hope for the best. Still, they will generally have twice the number of hammer units that you have because theirs are half the price of yours. And so the matchup is not great because eventually, even if you can't trade with them because they end up on top. Like a single Smash Captain can do a number on one of our units, and then you kill it, and no, who cares? It was like 120 points. So generally, I think we don't have good matchups just bashing at each other because we have fewer units and more expensive units, and not necessarily any harder to kill because we have more wounds, but we have less bodies. Whereas they can take their chaff power swords away and leave all the thunder hammers behind. So I think our matchups against Space Wolves and Blood Angels is generally not great because we can't trade. And we're way more expensive. And they have so many tricks these days. Yeah, so I would love to play Space Wolves. And so once COVID goes down, I'm going to look for some Space Wolves matches to get on stream, but that's generally what I think of those two matchups. Blood Angels I've played a lot, not recently, but in the past, and it's really about Smash Captains. And back then there wasn't a lot of Sanguinary Guard and Death Company around, but I think there would be more now. Not a lot of people are playing pure Blood Angels either right now. Hey Tom, no, I'm not into the whole TTS thing. I'd rather play an actual video game. So we'll talk about Dark Angels next. So Dark Angels is an interesting army. I think really Dark Angels revolves around using Deathwing Knights and some Ravenwing characters. So actually Nick wrote a good article on Dark Angels on Art of War. And the sample list he came out with was basically the kind of list that I was thinking about, which is Sammy, Talon Masters, Apothecaries, and some attack bikes, heavy bolter attack bikes, and then a big 10-man Deathwing unit with all the trimmings, the Ancient, the rerolls, all the strats, and you just use this unit. It's basically extremely hard to kill. It's a kind of Death Star unit, and it kills a lot. And so if you're playing against this army, then your main concern is obviously this Deathwing Knight unit, and it's going to come down out of Deep Strike 4 inches from you. So you got to be ready for it. Of course, you can still Tanglefoot it, and you got to hit it first. So that's the key, because I don't think they have a fight on death stratagem. So the key really is to hit them first, and try and take down as many as you can. Now, 3-up invuln the whole unit, so that's going to be either he's going to roll good or roll bad, right? So, yeah, that's your only chance, or hit it with multiple units. And then the rest of the army is not going to be too much damage to you. Those characters will fly around, but you can eventually get to them. So it's not too bad. But yeah, so whenever you're dealing with a big hammer unit like that, you always got to try and hit it first and hope for the best. But yeah, Deathwing Knights are scary. So okay matchup against Dark Angels, maybe slightly worse against Blood Angels and Space Wolves, but reserve judgment on Space Wolves. Okay, Chaos. I'm putting all of Chaos together, because Chaos is basically the ultimate soup faction. I don't know anybody who played any kind of pure Chaos list recently. Maybe Death Guard is the only one that some people play purely, and I think they're not good played just purely. So we're always going to get soup of all sorts of things, Chaos and Chaos Space Marines. Haven't seen a single pure demons list in some time. But we'll throw them all together. So we're talking either kind of Psyker heavy, usually 3 or 4 Psykers, lots of psychic buffs, and then like Emperor's Children shooting things, Old Blitz, whatever those spider vehicles are called, those seem to have disappeared a little bit. And then like Possessed Bomb is still a thing that people are playing. So yeah. So Chaos is a tricky matchup. Those are hard games that you can win if you play well and you hide and you pick your matchups. I think previous to the Possessed Bomb, the Chaos matchup was not too bad. It's almost 50-50, maybe slightly in Chaos favor, depending on how good the terrain is. But with the Possessed Bomb kind of swung it towards Chaos, because it's another thing that's really hard for us to kill and just, does a lot of damage to us. And then behind, even if you do get through it after a turn or two, then you got 3 or 4 smiting characters coming in. So the problem with Chaos is you get tied up dealing with whatever it is that's in your face, Oblitz or Plague Bearers or Possessed Bomb, whatever. All the meantime, you're eating 3 or 4 Psykers worth of psychic powers every turn, and that's the problem. So unless you can do your dirty work in cover or behind a ruin or something, you tend to lose that matchup if you get tied up too long in the middle. And so that's the danger with the Chaos matchup. So yeah, so 981 says 1,000 Suns Psykers detachments always butcher as Custodes. Yeah, and they will if you give them the opportunity to. So you have to try not to. Sometimes easier said than done. Terrain, as I said, is a big factor there. And then you know what? If you play enough psychic heavy armies, they always have one bad psychic phase at least, and that you have to be ready to capitalize on such things. I'm actually way more scared of things like Magnus and Mortarion lists, because those two guys just can go through our whole army just by themselves, unless you can hit them first and get a little bit lucky. So Chaos definitely have the tools to take care of us. Blitz, despite what some people think about Blitz are Custodes killers. I mean, min strength 7, -1, -2, -3. And 2 or 3 damage. I hate Oblitz, and they're still really good at killing us. So you rely on terrain and smart play, and you might have a chance, but it's a tough matchup generally. So that's basically like all of Chaos lumped together until they can differentiate themselves. Okay, Eldar. Eldar is one of the best armies in the game, so it's no surprise that our matchups against Eldar suck. I don't think I've ever beaten a good Eldar list played by a good player. no matter what that list is. Right now, Eldar most popular, we have Council. Okay, so Seer Council, plus or minus 1 or 2 units of spears, or maybe just 2 or 3 units of spears. Shining spears, which, guess what, are good again. Then we've got, then you can have Harlequins thrown in there, Guardian Bomb, Harlequin troops. And the other way of playing it is kind of tank MSU. So lots of serpents, night spinners, fire prisms, vibro cannons, that sort of thing. So these are sort of common ways that we see Eldar being played. And the other thing that maybe is less common now, of course, is the flyers. So 6, 7 Eldar flyers. So let's cover that first. How do you deal with 6 or 7 Eldar flyers? Well, you don't. You don't, and you just try and find a box and hide and score what you can. That's how Eric beat Yoshi at CCBB, because that's the only way that you can interact with flyers if you're playing a foot list. One shield captain not going to save you, I'm afraid. Even a unit of bikes is going to save you. Maybe take out 1 flyer before it dies horribly. Custodes tank's not great at shooting Eldar flyers due to -2, -3 to hit. So, we just don't have an answer for a flyer spam list of any kind, especially Eldar, where they can fly wherever the hell they want. They can smite you and jinx you and then shoot you. So Eldar flyer, we can't. It's just a really bad matchup. We can't deal with that. So the other way of playing it, so MSU tanks, wave serpents, spinners, fire prisms, we have some chance against that. Night spinners generally not that great against us. Fire prisms can be, but they need to be able to see you. Wave serpents are obnoxious, but you can get to things. You just have to move up the field, and you can't really wrap many things, and so it can be difficult to get to their back line. But if you luck out on a few deep strikes and charges and things like that, you can do your thing and have a chance against that kind of army. But it's difficult. You need good terrain. You need to be able to move around well. But again, it's a pretty tough matchup because Eldar, they have a lot of firepower, and it's hard to get to them, and everything flies, and so it's tricky. I'll just point out Dark Reapers. Dark Reapers made a little bit of a comeback because it got cheaper again, and Dark Reapers do hurt us. I don't like Dark Reapers. If you see Dark Reapers, you got to try and hide from those guys, but it can't be hard. And then spears, Shining Spears wreck us. Seer Council do a lot of damage, although with 0 AP you have at least a decent save against them, even with Jinx. So you might be okay against Seer Council, but then, they're putting in D6 smites and stuff. There's a lot of smites in that kind of army that still really hurts you. Some of these people are running lots of Harlequins, so Star Weavers, or lots of troops. And Harlequin troops are cheap. They're fast. You can't wrap them, and they have a lot of attacks. Solitaire, all those guys are actually fairly good at giving us trouble. Now, they die really easily if you get to them first, but they can really tie you up and just ping you here and there and take you down. And then in the meantime, you got Council and Spears flying around just wrecking things. So Shining Spears are bad. But the big thing about Eldar, which makes them so good against us, is their psychic powers, of which we have no defense against. So, and I'm not just talking Smite and Executioner. Doom, Jinx, just kill us. I mean, reducing the invuln is just death. Doom, rerolling wound is just death. I mean, this Eldar psychic powers are possibly the best psychic powers in the game. It has an answer for everything, and so they definitely have an answer for us. So that is the main problem with dealing with Eldar, is all the psychic debuffs. So always going to have tough matchup against army like that, no matter what they play. Even a fluffy list with different kinds of aspect wars, and they would still be pretty good against us, just because with Doom and Jinx you can basically kill anything if you hit it with enough attacks. So that's Eldar. We'll talk about Drukhari at this point, since we're on Eldar. So Drukhari is an okay matchup. If pure Drukhari is an okay matchup, I find. If it's Coven heavy, so Talos heavy or grotesques, racks, things like that. We match up well against those guys. They hit hard, but we also hit hard, and they're relying on the same invulns that we have. And so generally we're okay against those guys. It's about hitting first. They give up good secondaries. The other popular way of playing Drukhari, of course, is with a lot of Venoms. 5, 6, 7 Venoms, zooming around, dropping warriors, being really table control, and MSU sort of army, scoring big points that way. I find that's not too difficult, because even our bolters can kill Venoms. You generally can do well with things like Butcher's Bill in those matchups because there's so many units to pick from. So I think you have decent matchups against that kind of army. Just have to play smart, of course, and target priority is very key. But I think we have okay matchups against pure Drukhari. And then sometimes you might see Drukhari splash into Eldar lists, like Chris Blacken was running Council with Grotesques and Talos and things like that. And I don't know if you approach it that much different than you just adding the normal Drukhari stuff, but with like psychic debuffs and stuff, which kind of sucks. So it's pretty similar, but against Drukhari, we do okay. Okay. Genestealer Cult and Nids. We're not seeing a lot of pure Genestealer Cult these days. It's mostly Nids with a bit of Genestealer Cult thrown in. So, but Genestealer Cult, so you're not seeing Aberrants anymore these days. After the points hike, they're just literally all been thrown in the garbage. You will still see armies with 1 or 2 units of Rock Saws, and Rock Saws will kick your ass. So you got to weather the storm, screen out as best you can, and do that thing. The good thing is, like, a Flamer Bomb is not going to do too much to you. So they won't be able to use a Flamer Bomb to clear, a unit of 7 Guardians that's your screen. Then they're going to have to hit your screen with the Rock Saws. And if you're lucky on your invulns, you might survive that, and then they will just melt. So for GSC, pure GSC in general, if you can survive the impact, you will get through them. The other common ways now, they're seeing Ridge Runners, so 8-9 Ridge Runners. That can be difficult because they're very fast and we're not very fast. And they're actually decently hard to kill, and you have to get to them in combat, basically. And meanwhile, they're pelting you with las cannons. And while they're going to kill one guy at a time, there's a lot of shots there. And so that is a difficult matchup, I think, again, for us. And in the meantime, they may throw 20 or 40 Genestealers with Swarmlord at you just to keep you busy while shooting you. While that does give you wrap opportunities, Genestealers can generate enough attacks to get through and kill a couple of guys. And then you'll probably kill a bunch of them. And Swarmlord will hurt, obviously. So that's an interesting matchup. I think it's a good matchup if you have good terrain, but it can be difficult because they have a lot of tools still. And then if you throw in the more common things now, so Exocrine shooting. Exocrine shooting is pretty good now, and it's no less good against Custodes, but of course you can line of sight it. What you can't line of sight, of course, is Hive Guard exploding and shooting you twice, and Hive Guard have always been good against us, and they remain good against us. The D3 damage does hurt them, but as we well know, but Hive Guard shooting is still very good against us, and it's really hard to get to them because it's usually behind walls and walls of screen. So it can be a tricky matchup for sure. The other thing I've seen is like Gaunt Carpet. So, 200 Gaunts, 300 Gaunts. So, generally when you're facing armies like that, they will not do much damage to you, but it will take you a long time to get through them. And so you just get hemmed in and overwhelmed, and you own just your little section of board, and you just get stuck. So it's a hard matchup in terms of trying to score anything, but you probably don't end up losing things very quickly in that kind of game. You just get overrun by so many bodies. If you're not running bikes especially. So yeah, those are tough matchups. So generally GSC and NIDS are kind of tough matchups because they have so many options and units and ways of kind of either tying us down or slowly whittling us down. So we're not good against the tide, the tide of flesh. So how about Spore Mine spam? I don't think since I played Pippi long time ago with my Fire Raptor against Spore Mine spam, I've not seen it around. But yeah, that's just annoying. It's just annoying. Okay, Grey Knights. I mean, most people have bad matchups against Grey Knights, so do we. I mean, not only do they have a bajillion smites, even just one mortal wound still hurts, because these are things that we basically can do nothing about, and every wound hurts against our low model count army. But then they have paladin units that we cannot interact with. They shoot us, and that hurts. The side cannons hurt, storm bolters hurt, everything hurts. It's out of line of sight, ignoring cover. And then if you do get there and you manage to charge in, and even if you kill them, they fight on death and they kill you back, and then they have another unit, and if they hit you first, you're dead. And they have more units, although they usually have 2 hammer units, so we have 2 hammer units, but their hammer units are larger, harder to kill, and have way more options to kill us than we have to kill them. So it's not a good matchup against Grey Knights. So yeah, but lots of people have bad matchups against Grey Knights. Not going to spend too much more time on Grey Knights because... Okay, Knights. So Knights have always been our bugbear. Imperial Knights, 3 Knights, 4 Knights. So I'm talking about pure Knight armies now. Knights have always been hard because, especially before the Forge World stuff, we had no way of dealing with T8 reliably. We relied on 5 up to wound, re-rolling on bikes. And then we started to put things like Wardens and axes into them, and that's wounding on 4s, only -2, maybe -3. And then, of course, you're always fucked by the D3 damage. So killing Knights has always been difficult, and they're so shooty. And you can't stop them shooting by wrapping them. Those Gatlings are just deadly. The rapid fire battle cannons, everything they have is just deadly against us. And it's so hard for us we have to gangbang a Knight to bring it down. And then it can explode and take out a whole bunch of people, and the guy laughs, he has 3 more Knights, and he just took out half your army with an explosion. So Knights has always been a tough matchup for us. The Forge World stuff helped us a little bit. So Aquilon Terminators with Strength 10 are way better at killing Knights than any of the stuff in the Codex. Unit of 4, maybe 5 Aquilon easily kill a Knight in combat. But then it dies. Lose one in Overwatch, explosion kills another one, then you've lost a lot of bite. +1 attack banner does help bring some bite back. But, Aquilon. Caladius tanks were okay at chipping away Knights to half health when they were Strength 8. Now they're not good at that at all. The Blaze Caladius at Strength 9 doing a lot of damage can serve the same function of 25 to 50% damaging a Knight if you get lucky and you wound and then they fail their rotated invuln. So it's still not a good way of killing Knights. So none of that shooting works. The Telemon is great if you can get it there and it doesn't die in return, because it can kill Knights with its fists. But again, 300 points just to do that, the Knight is laughing at you. And then we really have no other anti-Knight options. So it's kind of depressing. And, Knights have fallen out of favor a little bit. We still see people out there playing Knights, especially locally in my area, but they've generally become less common than they were even a year ago. Capital City Bloodbath had 170 Knights. But if the Knight book makes them even half as good as they used to be, you're going to see a lot of Knights again, and we're going to have to break out the Aquilon again and really plan for Knights. But a full Knight army has always been a tough matchup for us, and still hard. It's just less people are playing them now. And if they get some good shit in their book, it's going to be really difficult for us. Necrons. I've played the most common Necron army these days quite a few times. So the triple flyer with the stupid mortal wound bomb and then a bunch of destroyers. The other way of playing Necrons I've seen is, warriors and immortals and all that stuff, and relying on Tesla and stuff like that. I think against foot infantry Necrons, we do fine. It's a pain in the ass to kill them, but It's fine. -1 to hit banner shuts down Tesla completely, makes them useless. So we're good against that sort of thing. Against the triple flyer bomb thing, unless you have a way of killing them before they strike you, which you don't, then that's going to go off. And so if you haven't spaced out well, you're going to take a lot of mortals. So maybe. I mean, you still have to roll to see if the mortals happen. So it can be very swingy. Basically, yeah, it's okay. But then destroyers really hurt. That shooting from destroyers and then you throw that stratagem on them really can wreck us good. I remember one time I was playing at the old multi-zone. I had my bike list. I had like 18 bikes, and I was playing Necrons, mostly destroyers, like 3 units of destroyers, and it was Dawn of War, so I just lined all my bikes on the back line, and literally it killed like 10 bikes in one shooting phase. Like, it was gross. So destroyers can really hurt. So hiding and engaging them on your own terms is key. So I think if you can survive the flyer bomb and then send a shield captain, peg off some wounds with shooting and send a shield captain to finish one off, then the flyers just become annoying and not as bad, but they still can hurt. And then you must protect your Vexilla to keep the -1 to stop the Tesla. Doomsday Arcs hurt. Doomsday Arc hurt a lot of things. And so that sort of thing really hurt. So actually, that kind of Necron list, 3 Doomsday Arcs, 3 flyers, and a bunch of destroyers, it's actually a pretty tough matchup for us in a foot list. Hey, Snoot DeVille, welcome. So that's a tough matchup for us. Any other Necron list is probably okay. Orks. Okay. I've actually haven't played Chris in a long time, but I used to have good games against Orks. So the kind of pure foot boy spam, not too scared of. It will take a unit of 30 boys 2 or 3 turns to kill a few guardians. So you will not die quickly from them, but it will tie you up. And that is the problem. It ties you up in your zone because you just jump unit after unit of orcs that you can barely kill in a turn right in front of you, whittle you down, and then they might die. And if you don't kill the whole unit, they come right back. And so they just overwhelm you like that. And then now, in the background of all that, is even better Smasher Guns. Rerolling ones with invuln saves. Smasher Guns, just by weight of dice, just taking things out. So, of course, you need to line of sight the Smasher Guns as best you can. It can be hard to do, especially when there's orcs all over you. So that's really where the difficulty in the matchup comes from. And then also, Shock Attack Gun can really wipe you out. Of course, it can be really unlucky too. That one time Peyton came over, his Shock Attack Gun did 4 damage the whole game. But generally, there's going to be at least 1 or 2 turns where that thing's going off, and that will just ruin your day. On top of all the Smasher Guns and 120 orcs in your face. So it's a tough matchup, even though the orcs themselves are not the danger. The boys are not the danger. They just tie you up and then everything shoots you. Now, of course, if you can tie up boys and wrap things and survive, then that saves you from the shooting. But then with the jump, they can get out of that. So some might consider it unwrappable, but still have to pass the psychic power to do that. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But generally, hiding and fighting on your own terms is the best bet against orcs, but it's tough because they have so many things. So you may have noticed that actually we have okay to not great matchups against most armies, but we're talking about the most hardcore lists played by really good players. So, as I said at the beginning, skill level does factor into it, terrain level, deployment. So don't lose hope. We are one of the few books now that doesn't have any new stuff yet. So, don't lose hope. And just play your best and learn from each game, and you'll get better, and you'll pull out games when you thought that you've long lost them. So I've learned that lesson many times over the last year. Keep playing. Your longevity eventually, as the opponent's army loses teeth, your toughness does feel like days of old. And so it can be really hard to get you down to 0. So keep that in mind. Okay, Space Marines. We don't need to talk too much against Space Marines. Space Marines did get nerfed pre-nerf Space Marines, all the matchups were bad for us. Tanglefoot is really bad for us. Not Tanglefoot, Thunderfire Cannons because of the Tremor Shells. And then on top of that, when they were also killing you, that was bad. Now they don't kill you as much, but still Tremor Shell is just ruins your day. Obviously, all the Iron Hand stuff was stupid. Centurions are stupid. 30 Snipers is stupid. 9 Eliminators is stupid. Null Zone, like all these things are just bad. And to a certain extent, all those things are still there. Raven Guard especially is almost completely unchanged. But even all the other stuff now, they just soup in other tools, and they're good in every phase and every turn of the game. You still got Stormbolter shooting -1, and like it's just bad matchup. They outrule you and outdice you, and actually are almost as tough as you. So just all the Space Marine matchups are bad. You have to play really well. You have to have good terrain. And you have to really be cagey, pick good secondaries, and take your points when you can, and be very cautious to stand a chance against a well-played Marine list, regardless of what that list is. So that's the difficulty in Marines. It's just really good. They got a whole bunch of books and rules, and even after the nerf, for an army like ours, is difficult. But if you play smart, you can put up some good fights. I won't specifically go into all the different Marine lists. I don't actually know what people are running these days since the nerf hit and then COVID hit, and didn't even see what people were planning for Adepticon. So it's kind of all up in the air. We're almost there, guys. Throat's getting a bit dry. Okay, Tau, our old nemesis, Tau. Okay. Old school triple Riptide 40 drones is an impossible game for us. We have no tools to deal with that. We don't have enough shooting to take out drones. They have enough shooting to kill us. And a good Tau player playing that list who moves up to the middle and controls the board will win that game 9 out of 10 times. 10 out of 10 times. You cannot charge it because you're just giving them a free shooting phase, and then all you do is smack drones in combat, and then everything flies back 1 inch and then roasts you. So it's really, really hard, almost impossible matchup for us. Now, what's interesting is this new style Tau list that like Richard Siegler has been playing with multiple commanders again, Farsight, big Crisis Bomb, and a whole ton of Breachers. Now that's an interesting list. I would really like to play against that if somebody local has that for after the COVID thing. But it gives us a bit of play. Commanders hurt, but if they get close to you, you can take them out. Breachers don't really hurt that much and are wrap targets, because as far as I know, they don't fly. There's still enough drones in there that you can't shoot the things you want to shoot or attack things that you want to attack. But generally, Breachers are not going to be surrounded by a whole bunch of drones. And then Crisis Bomb can really hurt, actually. So you got to try and screen that out as best you can. But it's still a very tough matchup for us. And nothing is Taucept anymore and Overwatching on 5s. So, and everything tends to be a bit more spread maybe. I need to watch a few more games from Siegler. So, we'll see. I'm reserving judgment on that matchup. I think it's still difficult, but I think it's less of a auto loss than the Triptide, drone spam list. Yeah, I'll be interested to see how that goes. Never thought I'd say I'd be interested to play Tau, but I am. Okay, we're almost at the end. Imperial Soup, basically, it's just a mixture of all the stuff there. Black Ice, I'll get to your question at the end there. But Imperial Soup, so Guard and Knights, or Admech and Knights and Sisters, or there's lots of variations of Soup. Lehman Russ tanks with Sisters and a Knight. And, you just take the elements from each part of the soup and decide if it's good for you or bad for you, and set a priority of how you want to deal with it. So it's no different from the individual faction advices. You just got to take it as it comes. Snootaville, am I worried about playing Death Guard? Not really. No. Mortarian's actually the most scary thing there. Those mortars don't do too much damage to us. And, not too scared about Death Guard. But not a lot of people playing pure Death Guard these days. At least locally. Assassins I won't talk about. I don't think Assassins are that great against us. Hey, Bruce. Splashing the odd Assassin might be just a bit annoying. Okay, final one. Mirror match. Hands up who's ever played a Custodes mirror match. Not me. I've yet to play a Custodes mirror match. As far as I know, I'm the only serious competitive Custodes player in my area. And we're such a small percentage of the meta that you'd have to be pretty lucky in a big tournament to play a mirror match. So I can honestly say I've never played the mirror match, nor even thought about it much until tonight. But I think a Custodes mirror match will depend on what kind of list you have against what kind of list. So if you're playing a foot list and the opponent's running mech, you're going to have a bad day. If you're both playing foot lists, I think it's just going to be whoever strikes first and can roll better 4-up invulns. Like, honestly, it just comes to that. So I don't think it's going to be a particularly interesting game. But, I think that's kind of the mirror match. But I don't think it's ever happened. Okay, that is basically it. That's a lot of stuff. So people can digest that. And ask your questions. So there was a question earlier from Black Ice. What would I like to see in Psychic Awakening? We've gone over that before. And I have actually, Black Ice, if you're on the Custodes Discord, my list of predictions is pinned to the top of the forum. So I won't talk about it too much, but basically in broad terms, we need to be tougher. We need to be a little bit stronger. And obviously now that we know we're going to get sisters with it, we need to be able to use their psychic protection. If it's just giving us random T3 bodies, we don't need that. So those are the things that I like to see, and the specifics are in there. Sean, what would you soup in with Custodes? I wouldn't. I don't like playing soup. But if you are going to soup in with Custodes, you have to soup stuff that is, if you're assuming that you want to play a majority of your list as Custodes, then you want to soup in stuff that fills gaps for us. And that is not too expensive, because most of your army is going to be expensive. So you want to soup in chaff for screening and objective holding. So that's why people run a lot of battalions, AdMech and guard battalions for CP and for chaff. But you are giving up easier kills like that. So if you run soup, you are understanding that you're changing the way you play Custodes, different from how you would play a pure list. The other thing that we lack is shooting. So you could soup in, I've seen people soup in Scorpius tanks or guard artillery or knight. So, putting in some sort of long-range shooting support can be very helpful, because we have none of that, basically, unless you're running mech list. So those would be the most common things that people soup. Actually, I'd be super interested to see if anybody's souping Sisters of Battle with Custodes, because I think that fits in because they're cheap, lots of bodies, and fairly hard-hitting too, and fast. So I think actually that would be an interesting soup combination. A contingent, maybe like 30 to 40% of your army is Sisters, and then the rest is Custodes. But the more points you take away from your Custodes side of your army, the less effective that side of your army will be. So, all right. So, we have come to the end of episode 14. I need to have a think about what to do for the next episode. If people have suggestions, please let me know. Message me on Facebook or join the Custodes Discord. You can find the link right there. And whisper me or just write it in the chat or whatever. Let me know what you guys want me to talk about. And my voice is getting a little bit rough, so I will sign off. But thank you very much for supporting us and for watching. Stay safe out there. Stay distanced, okay? It's not over yet. Stay out of parks and don't do stupid shit like that. Stay safe. Keep your loved ones safe. And We'll see you next time.